joy of watching a video of people playing your game online, and they're afraid.
Yo, there's a guy here, fishing me. In the building, in the building.
Here, literally on my side, sir.
But yet they're laughing and screaming because they're having fun. That's the ultimate reward, to be honest. More so than anything else, more so than the monetary aspect of building video games if you do it successfully, than anything. It's just seeing that makes me smile.
So the CEO of the studio behind Arc Raiders as well as the finals just gave a massive interview. That studio, of course, being the notorious Embark Studios from the land of IKEA up in Sweden. In this video, I'm gonna cover everything you're gonna wanna know from said interview. That includes the future of Arc Raiders and how Embark plans to update the game with more content. A pretty insightful look at the story of the development of the game, and even some super secret IPs that Embark Studios is working on. First, let's talk about the thing you're probably most excited to hear about. That, of course, being the future updates that Embark Studios is gonna bring to Arc Raiders. So let's hear it from the man himself.
We've updated the finals every single week since the time we launched it, and we will continue to update it every single week. We will use a similar approach to Arc Raiders. We will continuously update the game and make sure that people get a new experience and better experience on an ongoing basis.
Now, a lot of people, when they heard this, interpreted it as Arc Raiders receiving weekly updates in the future. That might not be the case though. As Patrick says, they're going to take a similar approach, not necessarily identical. Instead, as this article from .esports indicates, we're more likely to see a monthly cadence with potentially even larger updates a couple of times throughout the year. Now the question, of course, is what exactly are those updates gonna be? Embark actually just dropped a brand new roadmap for the rest of the year. I'm gonna be going over the entire roadmap in more detail in another video. But beyond that, we can of course also speculate based on how Embark has updated the finals since its release. Now, for those of you who might not be regular players of the finals, which, by the way, you really should be, the game is absolutely incredible. Basically, Embark updates the game weekly with pretty small changes. Then they have their mid-season patches where they will pretty much always add a special kind of game mode into the game. For example, they added in kind of their own version of Super Smash Bros, but like in the finals. Another time they added a soccer-themed kind of like Rocket League type of game mode. Now, I don't really know how exactly that would translate to an extraction shooter like Arc Raiders, but I do see some potential there of having these limited time modes, these limited time events. Probably the most obvious speculative game mode that I could think of would be that they would go back to the roots of Arc Raiders and do like a PvE only limited time game mode. Now again, do keep in mind that this is just speculative, but I do think it is highly likely that they will follow a similar kind of model with Arc Raiders, although probably slightly different. But we're just gonna have to see if my prediction turns out to be correct. Now, just a second ago, I mentioned PvE only and how that would be going back to the roots of Arc Raiders. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm pretty sure most of you know at this point, Arc Raiders used to be a PvE only game.
We relied on a game where the kind of loop, the compulsion loop of the game was so dependent on deep innovations within artificial intelligence, both in reinforcement learning, machine learning, and other aspects. And we thought that we could build a whole game around that experience.
However, they kind of realized that the game simply just wasn't fun enough.
You would go in and you would have amazing moments, and you would be like, yep, we nailed it, high five. And then you played 4 hours straight that were, just not fun. And some of them were even painfully bad.
I think it's really incredible how humble Patrick and I would say Embark Studios as a whole is about their products. And I feel like a lot of the studios and game companies that people have built up a grudge over the last few years against kind of have the opposite philosophy where they're kind of overhyping their things a little bit. They have this kind of like toxic positivity, it almost feels like. Whereas Embark's vibe, if I would try to describe it, it almost sounds brutally realistic. They're really just being honest to themselves about what they're working on, and if it's going to be worth the time of their players, if it's going to succeed as a product, because of course it has to compete with everything else that is out there in the market.
If we build a game, we want to try and bring meaningful change to that market, and to try and give people, again, we spoke about it before, a reason to come and try our game. And if we've done a good enough job, maybe they'll stick around.
But when you realize that Embark basically made a whole PvE game, thought it wasn't good enough, and then decided to basically add a whole nother PvP extraction shooter on top of that game, you kind of start to understand why our creators feels so special. And I believe it's because we're kind of getting a 2-in-1 game almost. And I'm sure they were also able to take a lot of the experience they have built in the finals when it comes to multiplayer PvP and kind of like put it in our creators, which kind of explains why all aspects of the game simply feel complete. And you can really see this shared DNA between the two games. There's this certain feeling to the guns in Embark titles. Shooting them, reloading them, even just moving around with them just feels incredible. And you know, a lot of that obviously comes down to the stellar sound design in both titles, which for the finals, it was a quite extensive process for them to record all the sounds of all the guns in all different environments. And I assume they did something similar for our creators, or maybe used and modified some of the existing sounds they have created for their library in the finals. Now, there is one big glaring issue that I do see with the development history of our creators and how PvP was added, significantly later in the development process, and that is that there is at the moment quite the strong Ludonarrative dissonance, which basically means what you do in the game and what the narrative is telling you kind of clashes, right? So the narrative of our creators tells the story of this beautiful lost world where everybody's getting along and working together. Even in the dark times, humanity can overcome by working together. The whole kind of narrative just falls apart when you sit into your little tube, slam the hatch shut and blast yourself to topside just to shoot the first poor raider you see in the back of the head, because it really just doesn't make any sense. Of course, there's prox chat, and a lot of the time people actually work together and cooperate, but it's still a PvP kind of game. I just get the overwhelming feeling that a lot of the tone of the world, the overall feeling of the world, is still stuck in this kind of PvE setting where you get your friends together to fight the evil ChatGPT robots and shoot them out of the sky and all that. But I do also have to say it's not that bad that it breaks immersion for me, because again, a lot of it also kind of like works out to kind of encourage players to be more cooperative, peaceful, and kind of boosts the social aspect of the game. Whereas if it was this kind of like very serious, dark tone to the world, I assume we wouldn't see as many people cooperating, so there's that as well. Like in this clip, for example, where I convinced 7 or more solo players to work together, kill the Leapers, so we could all get our olives for our oh so beloved Scrappy.
Holy moly. Let's go.
Yeah, drop the beat.
Does somebody of you have heal for me, maybe?
Don't shoot.
So good, man. Here.
Now, before I move on, I just want to say, if you've watched this far in the video, you're probably just as passionate as I am about FPS titles. I also put a lot of time and care into these videos to make sure they're informative and entertaining for you. But as I'm currently recording this, I have exactly 22 subscribers. But for your own safety, I have to let you know that all 22 of those are very loyal and dedicated. So if you don't subscribe right now, all 22 of them are gonna come and find you. But anyways, let's move on to future IPs at Embark Studios. Now, I didn't actually notice, but Embark has 2 more IPs cooking up there in Sweden.
The question you asked earlier, you're working on other projects as well. So that's are they all online games? Because I'm very mindful of how high risk that market has become.
It is, yeah. That I think is just ingrained in our DNA.
Now, they're not being very open about what those titles are, unfortunately. Patrick just says that One of them has a lot more edge than any of their current titles, and the other one is apparently a little bit more conventional.
One of the concepts we have is very, I would say, has a lot more edge to it than the finals or our creators does. The other one maybe is a little bit more conventional, but yeah.
It sounds pretty insane because when we think of Embark, we already think of games that are not necessarily conventional, so I can't even really begin to fathom what something with even more edge would exactly look like. But he also says that they have a more conventional IP in the workings as well. So yeah, there's definitely more to be coming from that studio in the future, so it's really a great time to be a fan of Embark Studios. There's a lot more in that interview. Christopher Dring from the game business really did a fantastic job interviewing Patrick, but as far as it concerns the average art creators and Embark Studios enthusiasts, I think I just about covered everything here for you. So yeah, thanks for making it all the way to the end.